If you're thinking that you want to take that action step, why wait? Book your session right now. Go to liberateyourself.com, click on either Liberate Hollywood or Liberate Emporium, see our amazing practitioners and who resonates most with you. And then book a session via Skype, phone, or in person. We're here for you, and it's your time to start creating your life. For centuries, mankind has been fascinated with realms outside of our conscious awareness. Through a series of interviews with practitioners, guest speakers, and experts, Liberate the Podcast covers all that and more. From health and holistic healing to the supernatural, we aim to educate, motivate, inspire, and liberate your consciousness. Hi, welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, as we continue our exploration in healing modalities and, people's journeys on the spiritual path, we're bringing in another amazing practitioner that pretty much has been on the spiritual path since she was born, studying different things, kind of fascinated by, the metaphysical realm. Her name is Michelle. She does Akashic record readings here at Liberate Emporium, but the interesting part about her readings is that she encompasses more shamanic work and a lot of different dynamics within past lives and more of like a healing kind of reading hybrid in utilizing and accessing the Akashic records to get into that state, to see more and to kind of dive into those different dimensions and different realms and heal and transform people. And so we're going to talk a little bit about her journey down the spiritual path, but we also want to talk about hearing about client success stories because, a lot of times people wonder, what are the effects on, people and how does this really help besides giving just information? And so I think that it's nice to take a step back and say, okay, well, how does this work to change people's lives, to see transformation, to have them overcome and heal different things? And so, Michelle, thank you for coming on today and, tell the world a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to be here and to share my journey with you and with all the listeners. I'm excited. Thanks.
All right, so let's start a little bit about, because I know that you've studied a lot of shamanic work, and she even went down to Peru and continued to work with shamans down there. So she's really taken it to that level of devoting some of her life to spiritual. And like a lot of the people that we have on and a lot of the people that are affiliated with Liberate Emporium, they're very much grounded between the two realms. So I think that it's very approachable for people that maybe are just curious. It's like, okay, she's an entrepreneur. She's had many different businesses in her life, and she, still does and works in the regular, let's say, 3D human world, and yet is very much a part of the spiritual path, which I think that there's, and I've said this before in different podcasts, is I think that sometimes there can be a big disconnect between somebody on a spiritual path and somebody in a physical material world, but it's really about merging and hybriding and bringing both into balance. But so share a little bit about, how you got to where you are, and what you see and do, and,
Awesome. Yes, I have to say I do agree with you with the balance, because there was a time in my life when I was so focused on the spiritual work and I was going in such a deep, deep, deep place. Like crazy deep place, that I was unable to really connect with people in my life that weren't in that place, which a lot of people, in my life at that time, it was when I was 19, 20, a lot of people in my life in that time were not understanding what was going on with me, and I just could not connect anymore. So I had to really shut it off, come back into the 3D world, and then sort of build my way back up and to find a balance. And that balance is so important. It's so important because you're here in this body and you've agreed to be here, so you need to really be able to function in both worlds at the same time. But my journey started when I was a few months old. I actually had my full awareness, full consciousness. I was in my crib, I couldn't get up, I couldn't stand up, I couldn't use my arms or legs, I didn't have a voice to speak except to cry. And I was furious. I was so mad that I was back in this baby body, and I had full consciousness. And I remember thinking, like, don't you know who I am? And my mother would come to, like, change my diapers, and I was so humiliated, and I would kick and scream and cry because I was fully aware that I knew how to clean myself and take care of myself. And I was like, don't you know who I am? And I felt like a full adult, like, stuck in this tiny body, and I was really very frustrated. And I have a lot of memories from that time in my life that my parents were like, how could you possibly have known that? But I was just born with a full state of awareness. I didn't have that sort of transition into it. And I started working with spirit when I was probably about 3 or 4 years old. The first time I really noticed that I was working with spirit, my mother and my grandmother were doing Ouija board for fun. And they were connecting with this woman, and this was back when I was living in New York, and my whole body became like just covered with pins and needles, like as if my foot was asleep, but it was my entire body, and I was standing next to them at the table watching them. And so they asked the Ouija board what was happening to me, and the spirit spelled out the word hug.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was amazing. And my mother and my grandmother were like, oh my God, what's happening? So from that point on, I had a series of, like, encounters with spirit, and every apartment I lived in as an adult before I started working, like, consciously working with spirit, every apartment I ever had poltergeist and had really active spirits, like dishes flying and doors slamming and TVs coming on and off, and, like, the whole, like, full-on craziness, like wet walls in the summertime, like just totally really wild encounters with spirit.
Interesting. I'm gonna stop you for a second because I need to ask a question, because this is something that, you know, I'm always exploring different dynamics in spiritual realms and going down rabbit holes, but one of the things that I'm fascinated by are, the spiritual souls that get incarnated, you know, into a new life, and at least from what I'm understanding or finding is that sometimes it's a traumatic death, and it's a very quick replacement of the soul. Did you have, you know, since you had so much awareness, I can't help but to think that this could be a possibility. I'm not saying that I'm not an expert in this stuff, guys, that are listening, but, you know, as I've been, you know, kind of looking and going down the rabbit hole, some of the things are like those souls that are, you know,
a walk-in?
Not necessarily a walk-in, but within my... if you hear a little rattling in the background, my dog is pretending to lay on her back and do the worm crawl across the chair. So, Piggy, stop it.
Puppy shuffle.
So, it's the piggy shuffle. So, you know, what I mean by saying that is that, okay, so normally when a soul, like, descends, let's say if it's a gradual process, you know, a lot of times when people are dying at the end of their life, you know, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, guys, but they have karmic duties and responsibilities and different things to heal. So you see a lot of, like, the elder wanting to make amends in their life and different things. And when they pass on, they go through different planes within the different dimensions. You know, you have your physical, and then your mental, and your emotional, and then you go back to your spiritual, and there could be, like, this waiting period, and then you go back and you get reincarnated. Okay, if you're subscribing to that belief system, whatever. But sometimes I hear that these souls come into their bodies, and they can even actually tell you about different dynamics from their past. And they still even believe their self to be the other soul, because it was such a quick transition from, you know, the death of their old physical body to the reuniting of the new. And it sounds, you know, this is the first time I'm hearing this about her, so I'm fascinated. But so I'm going off on a tangent for a minute, but I think it might interest people. But the fact that you had this awareness of saying, hey, I'm not helpless here. You know, like, why can't I move and do things for myself? What, you know, that just sounds to me like some of the things that I've read.
Yeah, interesting. I've tried researching it. I've never actually come across any like explanation for it. But yes, specifically, having my diaper changed was like the ultimate humiliation, because I was like, I can't believe this. Like, I'm totally in charge of my body and in charge of, like, how I can do this. How is this happening to me? But I had the consciousness of myself being a man and, like, being a grown, full functioning, like very strong man.
Did you ever like have any realizations or awarenesses of either what that man's name was or what you did for a living or anything like that?
The only thing I could really sort of surmise from it was that I felt like I was somehow, I don't know if I was like military or some sort of like alien ship commander or something, but I felt sort of like a man in charge. Mm-hmm. And I imagined myself being bald and white. And I mean, not imagine, but that's how I saw myself. I was like this big, brawny, like bald white man. And I felt that I was in a position of authority. And it felt sort of like the position of authority like you would have on a ship. And so I'm not sure if that's a Earth planetary ship or an off-planet ship, but that was my awareness. And I just was appalled that I was back here in this small girl body. Couldn't believe it. Total shock. I was shocked and so upset. And I remember like having the conscious awareness of like, there was a situation where I was on a glass bottom boat, and I asked my dad about this maybe a year ago. I was on the glass bottom boat and I had my hands on the glass and I was looking down at the fish below. And my parents were sitting on a bench, and I would look at them and be like, those are not my people. They're not my people. I have no connection to those people. How could I belong to them? Like, I felt like, not in an ego sense, but I just felt so much more like expansive than they were and so much more aware than they were. And I couldn't believe that those were my people. And when I asked my dad about this, he was like, you were 6 months old. How could you possibly remember being on that glass bottom boat? But I described the whole scene to him and my awareness of how I was emotionally, and I wanted to go down into the water and disappear away from those people because I felt so alien to them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And so, as you grow up and you kind of adapt, like, I mean, where, if you take me to, just because, from what I had been studying, something around maybe like 6 to 8 years old, people tend to get more acceptance of their new physical body. Mm-hmm. Did you find that to be the case, or?
I did, because my parents were very violent people, and my mother especially was really violently abusive, so that kind of like beat me into my body. And so I think that allowed me to accept being here. I know that sounds like crazy and counterintuitive, but I think, and because of that abuse that I suffered, and because of that like trauma and PTSD that I suffered from that, it actually helped me to further myself along my path of wanting to heal and work with other people. But it did bring me like very harshly into 3D reality and out of that feeling of being a strong man, because here I am again, like a 3 and 4 year old girl getting beaten. So I was powerless in that situation. So it did sort of really bring me into reality.
Interesting. There's so many things going on in my mind and so many ways that I can steer this, but for sticking on topic,
yes,
because my mind's triggering off in all of these different theories and that. But so if we continue down, so you have all these weird types of displacement, this kind of association, views and understandings of a different life, a different kind of life's basis, a man in control, maybe military, maybe Navy, for those, maybe not even of this planet, whatever. And then you're in the situation that you're extremely powerless, which begs, questions of, like they say, karma.
Right. Did I plan to have that experience?
Did you plan to have that experience, or what did you do in that bossy control role to others, maybe? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
True.
So we're fast forwarding because we're not on karma today. That will be a different topic, we'll talk about karma. But if we keep on moving forward, so now you shared just a little earlier that, as you're growing up, now you're when you move out and you have your own apartments, you're having, crazy things happen.
Yeah.
So where were you and where were you at within your belief systems and your understanding at that point? Because I'm guessing this would be like your early 20s or so, and you're like, holy crap, there's dishes flying across the room, and like this is the stuff that you see in the Poltergeist movie.
Yes. So I started going really deep in my practice at about 14, and about 18 was when things started really picking up for me, and I started having visitors, like off-planet visitors. And then shortly after that, shortly after that, my parents kicked me out of the house. And that's when I was out on my own, and that was when all the poltergeist action started happening. And I actually have a photograph somewhere of me and my roommate sitting, and there's like this entity between us. But at that point, I wasn't sure what was going on, and it actually started at about age 18 and kept going until about my early 30s. And every apartment I lived in, it just got bigger and louder and more hectic and more like poltergeist situations until my last apartment, when things were starting to happen every day. And then the ghost or entity that was in my house started actually following me to work, and it would be in my car, and it would change the radio, and it would screw with my car. And then I was like, enough is enough. And I finally got angry. I had actually trained myself to sleep on my back so I could see my whole apartment at once. And I was like this horrible insomniac, because if I'd wake up in the middle of the night, someone would be sitting on my bed or some crazy thing would be happening in my apartment. So one day I just was like, enough is enough. And I bought sage for the first time in my life. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to sage my apartment. And I made this like definitive statement. And I was like, you are not welcome here. Whoever you are, whatever you are, you have to leave now. This is my home. This is not yours. You are not allowed here unless I invite you in. And I was just adamant about really setting up my boundaries and putting my foot down. And everything stopped. And then a few years later, I was like, okay, I know all of those things have happened to me because I'm supposed to be on this path of working with spirit. And spirit kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I sent it away. But now I knew that I needed to invite it back in and to work with me. So I was like, okay, I know I'm supposed to work with spirit. If I have guides, if having guides is a thing, I'm going to go to this bookstore and you show me the one book I need that will open the door to me being able to talk with spirit, communicate with spirit, and have this on my terms, so there's no more poltergeist, but that I'm the one in control. So I went to the Bodhi Tree bookstore that is not there anymore, but it's supposed to be coming back on the west side. And if you guys remember, if you were there, it was a huge bookstore with thousands and thousands of books on the spiritual and supernatural and everything. And so I said, okay, if I have guides, I want you to show me the one book I need that will change and open the door. And I went in, and the very first book I saw was this book by Linda Howe about the Akashic Records. And I was like, that's too easy. That can't possibly be. Let me keep scooching around. And so I spent hours there pulling hundreds of books off the shelves, and I kept coming back to that one, and I was like, all right, I guess it is that easy. So I bought that one. I read it in 2 days, and I Googled her and found out that there was a workshop on that weekend. So I signed up for the workshop to learn how to access the Akashic Records on my own. And that was the catalyst that just changed everything for me. And I took her work and expanded on it in my own way to be really kind of this conduit and channel to do a lot of channeling work and channeled healing. And I'm able to talk with the dead, and I'm able to talk with spirit guides, and I'm able to communicate with off-planet beings. And so I sort of I took what she taught and really expanded on it to encompass all the aspects of my life that had been sort of haunting me and nudging me in this direction. And so that was the beginning of the beginning.
Wow. And so then you start, talk to me about the first reading that you did for somebody then.
So, the first reading that I did, oh my goodness. So, well, actually in the workshop, which was interesting, she had us go into a meditation and asked to be shown what the Akashic Records look like. And so funny. So this unicorn shows up and is like, hop on. So I hopped on the back of this unicorn, and he started running full speed toward a mountain. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to smash into this mountain. And he ran into the mountain, and inside the mountain was this beautiful crystal cave. And inside there was where I was able to gain access to everything. It was amazing. It was like this sort of initiation. It was crazy. And unicorns actually show up a lot in my readings. They will sit down next to the person I'm working with. They just come in and sit down. It's really lovely.
Were you ever fascinated with the unicorns as a kid?
I was. Yeah.
So cool. Talk about a little bit, because I know that you wanted to share about, doing readings and healing work on people, some of the shifts and changes that you've seen within their life as a result, you know? So maybe you could kind of share a couple, first off, who comes to you? What type of person do you most attract, that you find that you can help the most? And then within that, some of the people and experiences that you've helped.
Interesting. I find that a lot of my clients are in two categories. Not so much anymore, but the one category I used to get all the time was twin flames. I used to get girls coming to me all the time who were having this unrequited twin flame situation, and that was showing up for me a lot. And I felt really blessed to be able to help people with that experience, because it's a very painful one. It can be beautiful, but it can also be traumatizing. So I found a lot of my girls were that, and then also a lot of people that come to me. The first thing I do in your reading is I feel my body becomes a tuning fork for your body, so I can feel everything that's going on. And you might be there to ask me about your career, but your guides are like, let's handle this weird thing that's sitting on your head or sitting on your shoulder or sitting on your hip. And then suddenly the person is like, oh my God, yes, I have that pain. I've had it forever, and it's just normal to me. I don't think about it. But the guides are like, that's the thing that's going to change everything in your life. So I'm able to work through that and heal that thing. And that is the thing that catapults people's lives into the next plateau, or the next, new high that they're supposed to go to, the next level on their path that they're supposed to get to. And so I get a lot of people who aren't even necessarily, don't even know why they're coming to me, or are coming to me for something else, and the guides are like, this is the meat and potatoes to get to. So
okay, so you have somebody come to you. They're thinking they're going to give some type of psychic reading and information on their career. And you're like, we're not even going to talk about that right now. We're going to remove this thing on your head.
Yes.
And so tell me about, some of the dynamics and the follow-ups after the fact.
Yeah.
And some of the things of how, because you're in a really trusting state. You're not listening to necessarily what the client is saying that they want. You're just tuning in and doing what spirit wants.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the results and the things that come about?
So this is actually my favorite topic. I love talking about the healing work, because it's so beautiful how we really can create change in someone's life. Because what happens is there's kinks in your energy field that you're still carrying from past life traumas and past life deaths. And if you don't see it and realize it, it's really affecting your life now. So I have a couple favorite stories. I have a lot of favorite stories, but one that comes to mind, there's two that come to mind, and I'm like, which one do I tell first?
You can tell both. No, just pick one.
So I had a girl come to me, and she, and I didn't know, I didn't look at her body language, because my eyes are closed. Usually when I do my readings, my eyes are closed, and I'm tuning into your space. And I didn't know that she had her right arm hiding behind her body, because my eyes were closed. But right off the bat, when I was in her energy field, I was like, there's something going on with your right arm. The energy of your right arm is so completely different. It almost feels like a different body. The energy is vibrating so differently from the rest of your body. What's going on with your right hand? And then at that point, she pulls it out from behind her back, and she shows me this horrible eczema that she has, and her fingernails had rotted off, and it was crawling up her right hand. And she was like, I always hide this hand. I've had this eczema for 20 years. I've gone to so many doctors. Nothing is making it go away. I don't know what to do. And she had come for career stuff and relationship stuff, but I was like, what's happening with your right arm? And so her guides were able to show me a past life scenario where her right arm was chopped off, and she was basically publicly humiliated and spent the rest of her life living as a hermit, which now was reflecting in her not being able to move forward in her career and her relationship. She was still sort of being a shut-in. And so I was able to see what had caused this trauma and why the energy in her right arm didn't fit in with the rest of her body, because the right arm was basically not there. And once I was able to see this and heal it, she texted me 2 days later and said for the first time in 20 years, her eczema had cleared up on her hand.
Wow.
Yeah, and she said her fingernails were starting to just barely, like, grow back in.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was, like, so beautiful that I'm able to channel that sort of healing for people. And then another story that makes me really, really excited. So I had a girl come to me really recently, and same thing, I think she wanted to know about career and relationships. She'd recently broken up with someone, but right off the bat, I could see in her uterus that there was a baby who did not come to term. So I asked her if she had had a miscarriage recently, because I could feel that it was traumatic. It wasn't her choice. And she told me that earlier this year, she had had a horrible car accident, and because of that, she had had a miscarriage. And because of that, she had not had her period since. And she was young. Like, there was no reason why she wouldn't have her period. So she hadn't had her period in almost a year. And I could see two things. I could see the baby was still clinging to her. He really wanted to come through. So I was able to, like, talk to this baby and get him to, like, climb down off of her and stand by her side and hold her hand beside her. And I could also see this kink in her ovary on the right side, where it was just sort of like kinked like a garden hose. And so I was able to straighten that out and do energy healing in that. And then she texted me the next morning that her period started.
Wow.
For the first time in a year.
See, those kind of, like, confirmations. Some people, you know, are still skeptical on, you know, that everything is energy. But, I mean, you know, we're more, you know, space than we are physical mass.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have this energy that circles around us in these different meridians, and all of our organs, tissues, fibers, cells, so they're all energy. And if there's a block within that energy for whatever reason, whether past life, whether trauma, whether, you know, emotional, psychological, mental, whatever the case may be, it affects people.
Absolutely.
You clear that, and you shift that,
mm-hmm.
and suddenly things flow differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. I mean, if your drain is clogged, you
right.
call a plumber, or you know, or whatever you do, it gets snaked, and suddenly now the water that's just been sitting in the sink will flow and drain easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a block, it doesn't work.
Right. Absolutely. And we don't even know we may not even know what that block is, or where it's coming from, or why it's even there. And sometimes it just helps to have an external person come in and see, like, what's going on and help remove that and take it out, because we don't even know what we're carrying and how it's affecting us and how dramatically it's affecting our health and our well-being. But if it's in our energy field and it's still there, it's going to affect us.
So now what about, so those are things that are linked very directly to physical manifestations. What about things that you've worked on that have shifted people in their career, finances, or relationships?
Oh yeah, I have a great career story, actually. So a friend of mine who I worked with for years and loved and adored, and he came in my head for some reason out of the blue. So I called him and I was like, hey, like, how are you doing? I've been thinking about you lately. And he was like, I'm not doing well at all. I've been unemployed for 2 years. My husband and I are on the outs because I'm not working. I'm not contributing. I'm not making money. I'm so miserable. I'm so depressed. I'm really, like, at the bottom. I don't know what to do. And I was like, I don't know if you know this, but I do readings and I do healing work. Because we worked in a completely different capacity. We worked in the film industry together, and he didn't know this side of me. So I was like, I don't know if you know this about me, but this is what I do. Like, let's meet up. I'm not going to charge you. I want to help you. Like, let's see if we can get to the bottom of this. And he was like, oh my God, awesome. I totally believe in this stuff. Let's do it. So I met up with him, and I literally saw this sort of, like, metal plate sitting in front of his chest, and I saw, like, jobs coming in, And guides always have different symbols of how they show you like what a person is blocking or how it is. So
yeah, and there's two different levels of clairvoyancy, just so people know, that are listening. There is the metaphoric clairvoyant, and then the actual like physical, and so sometimes the mind will make up metaphors too. Mm-hmm. Spirit will make up metaphors, but the mind will make up metaphors. But there's seeing the images, and sometimes it's the actual like dynamic of what happens. And a lot of times the metaphors are more valuable to the person receiving the information because they can get the hidden meaning behind it and the reasoning behind it, right?
Exactly. Well said. Yeah.
So okay, keep on going.
Okay, so I saw this metal plate, like it almost looked like what you would use to, like in the old battle scenes, like the armor, the big metal plate in front of his chest. And I could see jobs were flying at him like arrows, but were hitting this metal plate and falling off and not actually landing in his body. So I was able to remove this metal plate that was sitting in front of his heart center, basically. And I told him, I was like, you're going to get a job offer within 2 weeks. And not because I was just sort of throwing that out there, but that was what his guide said, like 2 weeks, this job is coming through. And he's like, that's impossible. There's no way. I've been unemployed for so long. No one's responding to me. There's no offers. Nothing's happening. I don't believe you. And I was like, it's okay. You don't have to believe me. This is what Spirit is saying, 2 weeks. And he was like, okay. And so he emailed me 2 weeks later, and he said he had 3 job offers and didn't know which one to choose, and was so happy. And it saved his marriage, it saved his peace of mind, it saved his happiness, and now he's like flourishing in his career, and he's doing wonderful. And I'm so happy that I was able to help him get to that place, because he didn't know what to do. He couldn't see what was stopping.
Yeah. And it was energy. Sometimes energy can be very repelling. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, if you think about it, for those that maybe are just kind of starting out on this path or curious on some of these topics and listening, but maybe, that monkey mind or the rational mind says, well, this seems a little too hooey-wooey or out there. I mean, just think about walking into an environment and you feel the energy positively or negative. Now think about people that are in your life that that just give off a certain type of, we're going to call it energy for right now for all intensive purposes, but you can call it whatever you want in your mind, but they just seem very abrasive, or they seem unapproachable, or they seem like very unengaged or whatever. And you can see how that type of perspective in that person, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's through the words that they say or just the feeling that you get through their body language and other stuff, you notice that you can see it from afar, especially if you really care about the person, what they're doing.
Right.
And that's a form of energy, but where does that block come from? And why are they acting that way? And what is that shield that's up in like this case, or whatever the dynamic. So like take that, and what I think each and every person on this planet has experienced within any individuals, not unless you're living in a mountain somewhere, not having any human contact, but you can see the different dynamics within human behavior, physically, mentally, verbally, unconsciously, energetically, all of that. Now, a lot of times people are walking around, they don't know what the heck, why they're emitting or what they're emitting. And that could be from some of these things that are going on an energy basis.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps people maybe like start to open your awareness just a little bit,
Yeah.
What about
absolutely.
What about some examples in love? Because love always comes up for people. What about some of these twin flames people that you were dealing with?
Oh.
Did they get in and end up with a relationship with their twin flame? Did they heal and move on? What happened?
Oh goodness, twin flames are tricky. Twin flames are a very tricky one.
I don't have to say that we can have a different whole podcast episode on twin flames, but
absolutely.
I'm just saying that because you said there was two different types of people that come to you. One is, you know, these loving relationships, and so you can take it outside of the twin flames. I was just going with anything happen or any healings or dynamics happen as a result of dealing with people with relationships.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've had a lot of relationship questions, and one of my, this is not a twin flame related issue, but one of my girlfriends who lives in New York, she came to me years ago, and she actually still swears to this day that I saved her marriage, because I could see, oh my gosh, I don't remember if it was her or her husband's. It was in her heart. I could see her heart had this huge block in it. And it was also in her husband's too. And so what I did for both of them separately, I mean, he didn't even know that I was working on her at all. You know, she came to me and was like, we need help. So I was able to reignite this violet flame in her heart. I did a lot of like pulling out of dark energy in her heart and in his. And I was able to reignite this flame in her heart and in his. And I actually told her that because of this, he was going to quit smoking and start running, which he did. Yes, like he didn't know we were doing any of these work, and he like within like a week he was like, I quit smoking and I'm going to start running again. And she was like, what? So, and she swears that I saved her marriage, and they're still happily in love. They were actually on the verge of getting a divorce. They were discussing divorce. And she's like, whatever you did, that igniting of that violet light in their heart, and it wasn't, I mean, it was like a real intense process that I did. It wasn't just like, poof, there's the light. It was, you know, work. But it allowed them both to reconnect in a state of love. And, like, I think this is probably like 5 years going now, and they're still married. They're still very much in love, and they're still very much supportive of each other. I believe he's still a non-smoker. So it really shifted their relationship dynamic. And, yeah, she swears I saved her marriage still to this day. So...
Wow.
It makes me happy.
What about any other stories, or maybe?
I have a story. I had a guy come to me for a reading, and he was really wanting to find his one, his partner, his love. And I could see this woman in his energy field, but she was far back. She was far away. So I asked the guys, I was like, is it possible to bring her closer so that they meet sooner rather than later, because she was a little far away. So the guys were like, yes, bring her. So I saw her coming up and standing beside him, actually just a little bit behind him. So she wasn't quite ready. But within like a few weeks, he told me that he met this girl, this blonde girl, exactly like the girl that I saw in his vision. And he met her. Oh, and I have another exciting story. So another...
wait.
Sorry.
So he met her, and it wasn't just randomly?
So he met her, but she wasn't ready. So they didn't end up together, but now he's with somebody else, and he's very happy. But that girl that I saw in his energy field and bringing her closer when she wasn't ready, it didn't end up working out for them, but she did show up, like, really quickly.
Wow. Okay.
But then I have another girl who came to me, and she kept dating all these different men for years. She was dating different men, and I was like, no, I still see this man. You're meeting him at a 4th of July party, and I see him. He's taller than you. He's got his arm around you. He's got, like, narrow shoulders. He's skinny. He's like, I totally described this guy. And she's like, ugh. But I'm dating this guy, you know, what do you see with this guy? And I'm like, that's not the guy. This guy's still in your energy field. And every new guy she dated, she'd be like, what about this one? And I'm like, that's not the guy. This one guy is still in your energy field. So come 4th of July, years later, she had a 4th of July party at her house. And this guy shows up at her party and is exactly the guy I described. 6 months later, they were married.
Wow.
It was like instant love when they saw each other. Instant. They both knew.
I love hearing things like that.
Yes. So cute.
So you see, you know, for you know, like... I like today as you know, a difference in a lot of our podcasts are educational based, but I think this one today, it was meant to be like an opening of, you know, how do people apply this, and what are some of the practical things that can shift within one's life, and all of the the people and the stories that you shared really happened in a very few sessions, some of them in just the one session. And so it's amazing what transformation can happen. And of course the person has to be ready, but I always say that if somebody's coming in, that's the first step. Like if you are making a commitment to yourself that you want help and you want to make a change, that means that you're willing and you have the motivation and commitment. Because the uncommitted person won't show up for the session. The unmotivated person doesn't, try to even inquire about what things can be done.
Right.
And so I think that if anybody's getting that little itch inside that they want to go and seek help in some way, shape, or form, they're ready to make that change. They're ready to not be suffering anymore, to move beyond a situation. I'd say, if you're feeling that, act upon it. And those actions and those feelings are the first steps towards change.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you might not even be aware that you're listening to your guides, but your guides are gently nudging you in the direction that you need to go in order to get the help that will change your life, that will literally change your life. And sometimes you're not even aware why you're going to seek help, but there's a reason behind it and it shows up. And
so, I love that. If you had to leave people with one last thing, what would you say?
Let's see. I would say that everything is surmountable, that there's no unsurmountable problems in life, that everything is energy, that we are energy beings, that we're beings having a physical experience, and we can literally clear emotions, clear physical issues, clear traumas. Once you kind of get to the bottom of the issue, there really is help. There really is, for me, I lived with PTSD my entire life, and working with spirit and doing energy work completely healed me. And so I'm a big proponent of energy is healing.
Yeah. And well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing some of your stories with everybody. If you want to get a hold of Michelle, of course, you can find her here at Liberate Emporium, liberateemporium.com. Look under her practitioners. Michelle's there. Contact the store. She's here just a limited amount of days during the week. She does have other businesses and jobs and obligations, but she's always there to help and serve. If you enjoyed this podcast, we really appreciate if you could give it 5 stars would be nice. Anything that you want, but a review, some kind of comment, some kind of review, it starts to help people find us. And if you can do that on iTunes, the other podcasts, the other podcast outlets, if you want to leave a review on there, that's great. But iTunes seems to be the one that most people use, and if we can get some more reviews on there, we can start showing up in searches so more people can find us. Thank you so much for joining us, and Michelle, thank you for being a part of this podcast today. And
you're welcome, Christina. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a blessing to be here today.
Until next time, bye.
Bye.